this is the future, right? You know, people watching kind of on-demand TV, the younger generation, they don't want to sit down in front of a TV and wait till 8 o'clock to watch the show that they want to watch. They want to watch what they want, when they want, and different type of content, not very professionally produced and edited content. They want really raw, really relatable content. And he said, it's going to be massive, you know, and he was a very early kind of believer, and, you know, I believed in him and believed in what he was saying, so I thought, actually, I don't want to miss this. So it was really an element of right place, right time. You know, I was always used to measure success via, you know, kind of numbers, you know, quantifiable, you know, whether it's turnover or profit or, you know, materialistic items. But actually, you know, kind of, you know, reaching a point in my own career, I think becoming a dad, I think, you know, last year was incredibly busy for me. I got married, I had a baby, and I launched 2 new businesses, right? And it was a bit chaotic, and coming through that, you know, it's some of the non-quantifiable things that actually I think matter most. And it's about, you know, relationships, it's about, you know, fulfillment, it's about, you know, even things like work-life balance. You look at young people generally these days, their whole lives are lived out on social media. Everyone's, you know, comparing everyone else on social media, and it's all about chasing likes or views or engagement. Well, you imagine taking that to extreme. It's not only your social life, it's your professional life and your business life. Some of these people have dedicated, you know, they're 5 years from the ages of 16 to 21. They didn't go to college, didn't go to university, because they were following this dream of becoming a social media influencer. And then all of a sudden it falls off a cliff. And one of my clients, JJ, or KSI as he's better known, was fighting in a professional boxing match out in Los Angeles, and we flew out there, a couple of us from Carpenter Box, and we were ringside seats, an amazing, it was promoted by Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I think we had 50 clients in the room, you know, and we, you know, feelings, you know, as part of that kind of scene at that moment in time was kind of like, wow, yeah, this is special, because, you know, often I'm dealing with these people on a computer, on a phone. Actually being present in that moment and going, actually, wow, this is what it's all about, was really, really good, and a real highlight that I'll remember for a long time. Yeah, work hard, find your niche, find what you're passionate about. That's the most important thing at that age.
Welcome to the County Business Talks podcast, powered by Picture Book Films. Here, we're going to be talking to entrepreneurs and business owners from across Sussex, delving into the mindsets of what makes them really tick. Okay, so welcome to another episode of the County Business Talks podcast. My guest on the podcast this week is a partner at accountancy firm Carpenter Box, but he's not your average accountant. He became youngest partner in the firm age just 27. During that time, set up Starbox, a sidearm of Carpenter Box that looks after the financial affairs of some of the biggest influencers and YouTube sensations in the UK. He's also the founder at Arcade Media, and someone I've known over the last few years on and off the football pitch, shall we say. Delighted to welcome Sam Uwins. How are you, mate?
Very well, mate. Thank you very much for having me. Good to see you in a slightly different setting rather than running around a 6-a-side pitch reffing, but no, good to be here. Thank you.
Mate, no, listen, awesome. It's been great to obviously knowing you over the last few years and seeing things that you've started and got involved with and stuff. It's been fascinating. Look, really delighted to have you on, mate. So look, we're going to jump straight in, as we always do. Just tell listeners a little bit about yourself, about your business journey, sort of where it all started.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose I had a slightly unorthodox entrance into the world of tax and accountancy. I never set out to become an accountant. You know, like you know, a lot of people who end up in their kind of, I suppose, dream jobs, which sounds odd to say at this stage, but I was a very average achiever at school and probably an underachiever at college, and was trying to work out what I wanted to do. So towards the end of my college days, I went to Chichester College. The AAT, which is a kind of an entry-level qualification into the world of accountancy, came in and spoke to us about, you know, kind of an alternative route into the industry rather than going down the university route. You know, they kind of use this phrase, earn whilst you learn. And because I'd underachieved at college, wasn't sure I ever wanted to go to university, I saw it as an opportunity to, you know, get a role, get a job and try and move forward. So I, you know, went through my network, wanted to find a placement, because the big thing was, you know, you can earn whilst you learn, but you've got to go and find yourself a role, find yourself a job. And obviously this was in 2009, so we were just coming out of big recession, you know, economic downturn. Lots of businesses had kind of tightened their belts, so that was a little bit tricky, but managed to find, through a good friend of mine, his dad was in the industry, and managed to secure 6 weeks work experience as a starting point. So
Nice.
Started on 6 weeks work experience, and kind of the story goes from there, really.
Wow. So in 2009, you obviously started in as a trainee at Carpenter Box, but then 2013, recently after you qualify as an accountant, you then, that's sort of almost where Starbucks
Yeah, absolutely.
started. So how do you at that age go into the partners and go, you know what, I've got this idea? And
yeah, so what happened was the reason I got into accountancy in the first place is I'd always had a keen interest in business and finance. I've always, even from a very young age, been really interested in business. I think I always read Steve Jobs' autobiography, or those sorts of individuals were very influential for me. People I kind of looked up to, and wanted to kind of make my way, and I thought accountancy was a great route into business more generally.
You'd felt like you would, like from that young age, you say, like about reading them type of books and stuff. You got into account, but you had an idea. You thought, well, one day I'll have my own business or something along them lines.
Absolutely, always wanted to have my own business. Always wanted to be involved in more of the running of the business. And accounting for me was, it teaches you all of the fundamentals about running a business behind the scenes, and it was a great route to become a business owner in the future. So my family business is actually kind of in construction, and I realised from a young age that that's absolutely not what I wanted to do. My granddad worked in that industry, my dad worked in that industry, and during that kind of limbo period of kind of finishing college and finding a job, I think it was 2 weeks work with my old man, going out on a building site, getting up at 6 in the morning, leaving home. And I thought, I don't want to do that, and that was the motivation for me to think, right, when I landed that opportunity with work experience at Carpenter Box, I thought, I can't let this slip through my hands, because obviously they're a great local business. I grew up in Worthing. Obviously they've been in Worthing for 100 years next year. It's our 100-year anniversary, which is quite exciting. So so got the work experience and thought, I'm going to absolutely work as hard as I possibly can to prove myself, because I was actually missed the kind of intake for going on to a student contract. I think they'd offered all of the positions in the February. I only kind of started reaching out to people in, I think, May, and they were like, sorry, all of our roles are gone, but come in for 6 weeks work experience and we'll see how you get on. So I worked really, really hard, and then kind of went into the managing partner's office at the time and just said, look, thanks for the opportunity, really enjoyed my time. I'm going to apply for a trainee role next year, and hopefully I'll see you again in the future. And he turned around and said, look, we've been really impressed. We managed to kind of create a role for you, and we'd love for you to stay. So so that was 2009. I stayed. I then kind of went straight onto an ACCA studying package, which is the Chartered Certified Accountancy exams. I was just about to turn 18 and thought, I'm going to have to work hard now, because up to that point, studying and exams and were very low down on my priority list. I'd kind of enjoyed my teenage years probably a little bit too much. Yeah, sure. And like I said, doing that time with my dad, I thought, I don't want to go back to doing that, so I've got to make this work. And yes, I studied really hard and managed to qualify in 4 years, and became a chartered certified accountant at the age of 22, which I think was quite a surprise to my parents, given that I'd pretty much failed college, not because I wasn't bright enough, but just because I hadn't found that drive or wasn't interested in that side of things at that point.
Because what's interesting, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this, about because I talk on here quite a lot about the education system and what that looks like, and it's just that sometimes like school, college, doesn't actually fit in with because there's a curriculum and there's things you've got to follow. If you're not, that doesn't tick your boxes, or you're not learning in that way, then you're not following what you want to do, so you're not engaged in that. You know what I mean? So
absolutely, I found the education system didn't motivate me, at all. I couldn't associate the studying I was doing at that point with my kind of dream of being a business owner or something in the future. So I'm also somebody that didn't go to university. We're seeing more and more people go to university now, and I'm a big believer that there's alternative routes to in any career path, not just in professional services, but than not going to university. And I talk to a lot of young people at the moment, and university is great for some people, but actually it's not right for everybody. And unfortunately, I think we've seen more and more people feel like they have no choice but to go to university. They're racking up huge amounts of debt, and it's not actually providing them the opportunities that they were expecting. They almost feel like they've been sold a bit of a dream, go to university, get a good degree, you'll get a job. And unfortunately in this day it's just not the case. Sometimes actually having some hands-on real experience can be more valuable than perhaps some of the university degrees that people are giving out these days. So university is a great option, but it's not the only option in my view.
I love that. And obviously we're talking about it a little bit later, but you obviously just had a young
daughter. My daughter Millie, she's turning 9 months old next week. So
So because I always thought about, like, with marketing, I think, like, as they grow up, if they come to me and they, Dad, I want to be a solicitor or a doctor, and they you have to get a degree that's the only path to do that, then fine, of course I support that. But to just go to university, I don't really know what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to go and get a degree.
Almost buys them time, doesn't it, a little bit? And I think at the moment, young adults, 18, 19, there is a real lack of opportunity, and therefore I think they feel like going to university almost kicks the can down the road, and it's like, I'll deal with it when I'm 21, 22 in 3 years' time. But with the cost of going to university these days and the competition for jobs and roles, and it's really, really difficult out there. It's really tough for young people at the moment.
I agree, and I think, like, for me, that I would not discourage them to go. Like I said, if there's a specific thing they want to do, of course, no problem. But if not, I'd love them to come to me and go, Dad, I've got a business idea, or I'm going to travel the world, or go and get some experience, life experience, or do something because, like you said, I'm a believer in that as well. I didn't go to university. I failed my A-levels. I come out and didn't really know what path I was going to take. So I think just to show that there are other opportunities out there, and especially like entrepreneurship is encouraged a lot more in schools nowadays. I think it's more, and hopefully that will be encouraged when they sort of get to that little bit older. And I think
no, I completely agree. I think the education system is very rigid and very structured, but actually we live in a world where you have huge amounts of access to information online, and you can teach yourself an awful lot as well. A lot of my clients are completely self-taught from watching videos on YouTube, whether that's how to edit videos, how to create websites. They're teaching themselves. They've got that entrepreneurial spirit, and unfortunately the education system doesn't look to kind of encourage or mentor that at all. They want to send you down the traditional path, and I've tried to break the mold with what I've done a little bit. Like I said, I didn't go to university. I did do my chartered accountancy exams, which obviously were really important to me at the time. But in a professional practice, I've managed to break down barriers within our own business, which hopefully will provide a path for other people coming through as well.
I love that. And like I say, again, back to that time of going in in 2013, so you've just qualified, but you're going in and presenting the idea about Starbucks, but where's that confidence come, like, to be able to go in at that stage and go, I'm just qualified, but you know what, I think this is the future. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So the story kind of goes, I went to school with a local lad called Marcus Butler. We've been friends for a long, long time, I think since we were about 7 or 8 years old. And he was creating YouTube videos from the age of about 16, 17. At the time, you imagine we're a group of young lads, he was kind of the buck of the joke at the time, while you're uploading kind of silly videos online. But it soon kind of took off. He found, he was one of the kind of first generation or first wave of kind of online social media stars that could, not only make a living from social media, but make a very good living from social media. And he phoned me up when I think we were about 20, 21 years old and said, look, I've started earning a bit of money from my YouTube channel. I'm actually going to quit my job and do this full time. I think I need to pay some taxes. I've got no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me out? So I said, I've been training for about 3 years by this point. I'd kind of got the basics, and I was, kind of, I suppose, learning my craft, so to speak. And said, well, look, I'll happily help you out. I'd known how some of the behind the scenes work just from being around him. I actually helped him film a few of his early videos behind the camera, and understood how the back end sort of worked. So I said, yeah, well, let me help you out. So I helped him do his first tax return, and he became my first client just from being a close friend. Through word of mouth, we ended up with about 3 or 4 clients just because I could talk the language. I knew how it worked, and people, because Marcus was using me, other people said, oh, well, if you're looking after Marcus, just look after my stuff as well. So I had about 4 clients, and I thought, well, actually, this industry is now growing really, really quickly. And you've got to remember back then in kind of 2013, this was a tiny kind of seed compared to what it was now.
Yeah, sure.
There was probably only 50 people in the country that were earning any sort of money from uploading videos on YouTube. I thought, actually, this is just growing. And Marcus had said to me for years, this is the future, right? You know, people watching kind of on-demand TV, the younger generation, they don't want to sit down in front of a TV and wait till 8 o'clock to watch the show that they want to watch. They want to watch what they want, when they want, and different type of content, not very professionally produced and edited content. They want really raw, really relatable content. And he said, it's going to be massive, you know, and he was a very early kind of believer, and, you know, I believed in him and believed in what he was saying, so I thought, actually, I don't want to miss this. So it was really an element of right place, right time, you know, in terms of obviously my friendship with Marcus, my understanding of the industry, and then it was a case of going, well, hold on a second, you know, Carpenter Box, we've been around for like 90 years. We're a very traditional business in the local business community. We're now trying to attract clients of a very different demographic, both age and region and geography. You know, these clients are based all over the country, and they're often aged between kind of 16 and 20 years old. And my message to the board was, well, you know, the branding at the moment, you know, you're after your traditional kind of 40-year-old businessman in the local business market. The website and the brand just isn't going to be suitable in my view. I think we need to do something different. And I think because of the success, you know, we'd had and obviously I'd been, you know, coming through the ranks from an early age. I was 17 when I started at Carpenter Box. Wow. And like I said, by the time at this point, I'm probably 21, 22. And they backed me, to be fair to them. Alan Edwards, who's now managing partner, he was kind of my mentor and he was a partner that I kind of reported into. He really backed me and said, look, you know, what do you need? We spent a couple of grand on effectively a website and a brand, and we came up with a name. And it was kind of born from there, and then through kind of word of mouth and, you know, a little bit of SEO and a little bit of marketing, but predominantly word of mouth. You know, we've now got, I think, nearly 400 clients that operate in that social media world, and Starbox makes up close to 15% in terms of turnover of the whole Carpenter Box business. And obviously, Carpenter Box has been around for nearly 100 years. Starbox has just ticked over 7 or 8. So it's been an incredible journey. And obviously, although I still head it up, we've got a team of about 16, 17 people now that work looking after that kind of Starbox portfolio of clients. And what's really nice is it's still very much part of the Carpenter Box family. You know, we didn't ever spin it out. We've not, you know, I've not taken it out myself. You know, the Carpenter Box partners, as a collective group of individuals, we all own that brand and own that business, and you know, all very excited about the journey that it's on.
That's incredible, really. And I think what's fascinating, what I think's fascinating about it is, like, at 21 years old, to be, like you say, a little bit right time, right place, and I get that. But I think I always, we do create our own luck sometimes as well. And I think, like, you've got to have a mindset, be open to opportunities. Like Marcus could have said that to someone else and gone, oh yeah, and they'd have just gone and carried on working at Carpenter Box and doing their thing. But for you to, like you said, have that, I guess, that mindset, that open mindedness to go, there's an opportunity, because entrepreneurs ultimately just look for opportunities, don't we?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was identifying the opportunity and being kind of, you know, passionate and, you know, really believing in it enough to almost then get the wider kind of, you know, the partnership group at the time on board. And, you know, it wasn't easy. I'm not saying I walked straight in there and they just wrote a check and said go for it. But, you know, they were effectively backing a 22-year-old guy who was I was still learning my craft, and I was very closely, you know, mentored. They said, you go and do your thing, bringing in the clients, but, you know, everything was reviewed by all the managers and partners, and, you know, all the proper kind of, you know, compliance processes were in place. But, you know, fair play to them as well for giving such a young guy free rein to actually give this a go and roll the dice. So it was kind of, you know, from both sides it worked quite well. And I think, you know, that's why a lot of people say to me, oh, you know, you're still at Carpenter Box. I thought you might have, you know, a big business, and there's a real element of loyalty to that. You know, they backed me when I had a vision that would have been quite alien to them, you know. And actually, I've always wanted to kind of repay that support and belief with loyalty and build it together. So, it's been great.
That's great, and that's a great trait to have, isn't it? That loyalty as well, and loyalty and integrity that we have in business. I think their two values are held in quite high regard, and I think that gets you a long way, I think, in life in general, and certainly within the business world. I think if you stick to those morals, it's brilliant. I want to talk a little bit about. I've done a talk recently about failure, and that we face some challenges and stuff in the business. It seems that, talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges maybe you've had, like from as a 22-year-old, and obviously then leading that arm of Box. I guess it helps having, like you say, having Carpenter Box and some great advisors then behind you on that sense. But going up through that, and then obviously we will go on to talk a little bit about Arcade Media, which you founded as well as another business. But talk to me a little bit about some challenges and your relationship with failure. Obviously, especially like you sort of say, from the college side of things, you sort of come out of there. So just your mentality around that.
Absolutely. So, like I said, college was I effectively failed college. I scraped through with enough A levels to make it onto the course that I went on to, but I effectively I got a U in my chemistry exams, for example. So I completely failed that. I did better in business and accountancy. I'll let you all know, so don't worry too much. But chemistry, I completely failed, and I was a young guy at the time, and I'm the youngest in my year. I'm a late August baby, and I kind of didn't have that maturity. And I think the biggest thing that I learned shortly afterwards is that I never really learned how to learn, and that sounds crazy, but through my GCSEs and my A levels, I never found a technique or a method for me that meant that this stuff would stick. And going into diving in as an 18-year-old to do the ACCA exams, which are notoriously difficult, I had a rough ride actually in the first couple. I scraped a few, actually failed one of the early ones, and then all of a sudden it clicked, and I found just a technique and a method for me that worked, and it was nothing that anyone else had ever taught you previously. And from that point onwards, I effectively had a clean slate and passed every exam. And I think that was a combination of maturing as a young adult, but also just finding a technique that just worked for me. It just happened to click at that time. But that was a challenging time for me, because all of my friends, apart from Marcus, who was doing his social media work, had gone off to university, and they were all living their lives, out a lot, making new friends, making new social circles, and I was still living at home, working 5 days a week. Actually, in the first 8 weeks, I was working 5 days a week at Carpenter Box, and because I was only on kind of work experience, my mum wouldn't let me quit my weekend job, which was working at Tesco's. So I worked 9 hours on a Saturday at Tesco's, 4 hours on a Sunday at Tesco's, and I worked Monday evenings whilst still doing 5 days a week work experience at Carpenter Box. And from that point onwards, I kind of learned hard work and learned how much of an opportunity I had, and I didn't want to lose it. So but that was a tough period, kind of coming of age a little bit, I suppose, which was interesting. The second one that really sticks with me was I was around 25 years old, and I lost my biggest client. They're local. I won't obviously say who they are, but they decided to leave. One of them had been with me for 4 or 5 years. One of them had only been with me for maybe 12 to 18 months, and they didn't really give a read. We hadn't made a mistake and made an error. They were effectively growing significantly in their own roles and profiles, and they were very, very successful. And I think I was a young 24, 25-year-old guy, and they'd effectively outgrown me a little bit. They went to a big central London firm with high-flying, people with a big reputation. And that was my first real knock on my confidence, because at that point, almost everyone I spoke to had signed up, and I'd been getting glowing reviews, and we'd been doing amazing work. And then to lose your big client to effectively a big traditional firm in central London, I thought, oh God, is that how they're all going to go now? And you think, can I actually do this? The self-doubt was massive, and I, from being on a real roll of like I said, everything really kind of just falling into place and going to plan, to then lose your highest profile, biggest client. It wasn't so much about the finances, because at that point I was just getting paid what I was getting paid. But it was about the reputation. It was about going, oh right, well they've left, and actually why should I be with you, and who've they gone to, and people talk in the industry. And that really knocked me for six for a few weeks, and kind of really knocked my confidence. I was going into every meeting so confident about what we do, what we offer, and why people should sign up with us, and what value we add. that I started really self-doubting, and it took me, a few weeks to kind of, get back on the horse and kind of really rebuild that confidence. And don't get me wrong, that we've lost a couple of other clients for varying different reasons, but generally speaking, we lose very few clients as a percentage of what we got, and that for me was, that just builds your confidence,
sure.
and the amount of referrals that we get from other people means that we must be doing
something right.
Must be doing a good job, must be doing something right. And I think what was challenging about that particular one is when I tried to kind of understand it and I tried to rationalize it in my own head as to why they'd made the decision, but there wasn't really a reason. They didn't, and it was almost like if we'd made a big error, it's like, we've made a mistake, this is the consequence. Like, no, I understand it, but they never really gave a reason, and I really kind of struggled with that, because you just start going into your own head about, well, what have I done wrong? Is it me? Is it this, that, and the other? And as a young adult, at 25, I think I was at the time, that was really, really tough to deal with, and had the potential to derail this whole project. I think we probably had 25, 30 clients at the time. We lost our two biggest clients in one go, or two of our biggest clients. You think, well, hold on a second, but actually the following year after that was probably one of the best years after we kind of got over it, and really kind of kicked us on, and really just wanted to go out there and be the best in class, and really kind of nail down that whole industry, which we managed to do in the end.
Mate, it's incredible, because I can imagine that thought process around it. Like you said, that my understanding of that world, the YouTube, the influencer world, is like you say, they all sort of know each other. Is it that type of thing? That's my impression.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's I don't think it's so active now, but in the early years there was this famous kind of Facebook group where if you were any sort of size creator, everybody was in there, and they'd always just sort of say, I'm looking for an accountant, does anyone know a lawyer, does anyone know this, that, or the other? And it was a real tight-knit community, because there was lots of people at that time trying to crack that industry, because they knew there was going to be some money in it, and because we'd been in it before there was any money in it, we had this kind of natural trust. It wasn't like, oh, they're getting big and they're earning lots of money, now we're interested. I was doing it right from the very beginning. So we've always had a really, really good reputation in the industry, and like I said, a huge amount of our work comes from referrals, because people talk, they say, well, who are they looking after, who sorts out your tax or accounting or financial advice, and they say, well, go and talk to Sam, go and talk to Nick, who's one of my colleagues who's been with me for the last kind of 7 years now. And it's a bit like in the football space as well. If you're in a Chelsea dressing room a few years ago, you need something, you probably go to John Terry. Where do I get this? Who looks after this for you? And John Terry will tell you his guy. I hear the same. Mark Noble at West Ham apparently is exactly the same. If you need something, and there's a few kind of leaders in the industry that people naturally kind of go to. Because they feel like they've got their house in order, and people go, well, I want to have my house in order as well. It's been great. It's been a real journey over the last. I've been at Carpenter Box for 13 years now this year, but Starbox for kind of 9 or 10 years. Which has been great.
That's interesting about it, and it's great to see that. I guess like you say, that resilient mindset, like it's. Because I always think, like with failures, we learn from those things, don't we? I guess with that, like you said, it's that's something a little bit out of your control. Like you said, you couldn't pinpoint it to go, I've actually done something wrong. But so it plays on your mind maybe a little bit more. What is it that's happened there? But then to go, right, no, bounce back and come out of it and go, and then keep growing as you have done to like 400 clients, like you said. Quite an incredible growth then over the next few years as well, which is. So talk to me then about what does success look like to you?
I think that's really interesting. I think if you'd asked me that a few years ago, I was always used to measure success via kind of numbers, quantifiable, whether it's turnover or profit or materialistic items, but actually kind of reaching a point in my own career. I think becoming a dad, I think last year was incredibly busy for me. I got married, I had a baby, and I launched 2 new businesses, right? And it was a bit chaotic, and coming through that, it's some of the non-quantifiable things that actually I think matter most. And it's about relationships, it's about fulfillment, it's about even things like work-life balance. You ask my wife, I've worked a stupid amount of hours in the last 12 months chasing this dream, but actually you kind of realize that you know, if you're wired that way, you'll never really get there, because actually you know, some of my biggest successes, you know, people have been like, oh my god, that's amazing, but for me it's like, well, what's next, and trying to kind of actually move away from that a little bit and actually really appreciate what you've already got and what you've already achieved, allows you to, I think, you know, become, you know, happier and actually enjoy the success a little bit more, because you know, otherwise you'll just keep going. I think you'll even if you become a billionaire, it won't be enough for one reason or another. So yeah, trying to move away from those quantifiable numbers, and actually look at, you know, enjoyment of life, and like I said, work-life balance, relationships with your friends and family, and you know, and enjoying the now, live in the present a little bit more. That's kind of, and I've only really recently been on that journey in the last 12 or 18 months. I think if you talked to me prior to that, it was about chasing the next, you know, success story. You know, whether it's more clients, more money, more businesses, more whatever it might be.
Mate, you know what? Fascinating, such wise words from, you know, still, because how old are you now?
I'm 30 now. Yeah.
From me, like, because I look, but I talked very similar to this in my recent talk. I was talking about failure, but I then talked about the definition of success, and it was very much along them lines. I was like, from 30 up until probably near to when I was 40, I was chasing. In my head, it was all success was based, because there's a narrative out there that's still based around your success is how many zeros have you got in your account, or what a successful business is someone that's turning over 100 million or whatever that looks like. Whereas, and we mentioned off air a little about Stephen Bartlett, but he talks about it in his book as well, like at 25, like floating on social chain for wherever he was, his net worth 30 million or something at the time. And you sort of, but he talks about exactly that, about fulfillment and not promise yourself this big euphoria moment, but it's not there. It's an anticlimax.
Yeah, I think I see that with a lot of my clients as well. You know, some of my clients are incredibly high profile. They get invited to every event under the sun. They're multi-millionaires. You know, they're famous as well. Throw that into the mix. But actually, you know, they're not necessarily happy, and a huge proportion of my clients have, you know, therapists and support around them, and some of them talk openly about it, some of them don't. You know, I'm aware of it because, you know, I talk to them, and I'm their close advisor, and for me that was a real eye-opener. You think on paper these people should be the happiest people in the world. They've got all the money, all the fame, they've got all these famous people in their phone book, they can go to any event under the sun, they want to go to the Brits, the BAFTAs, the Oscars, you know, they can get there, they can do what they want. But actually, because of the journey that they've had, they've lost a lot of those kind of school friends, or they don't talk to their family as much because they've been so caught up in this world, which unfortunately is filled with, you know, a number of kind of fickle people that are kind of chasing that lifestyle as well. They don't really know who to trust, or, you know, who to work with, and you know, that really takes its toll, and actually seeing them go through that on an even more extreme level to myself, you kind of think, well, actually they've got everything on paper and they're not there, so, you know, actually that's not the answer. You know, it's not the answer to just keep chasing more and more and more, and, you know, you're trying to focus on, like I said, some of those things that aren't zeros in a bank account, or who, you know, famous people that you're networking with, and like I said, that's only happened for me in the last kind of 12 months or so, and as part of that I've tried to really adjust my work-life balance. I've been trying to delegate, we've been trying to hire, we've been trying to bring in really senior members of people that I can hand over responsibility to, that previously I wouldn't have wanted to, because I was never a real control freak. I've always been aware of the benefits of delegating and bringing in good people. You know, we've had to, you know, with the size of the business that it is now, but you know, even more so, I'm really trying to push that. I'm really trying to bring in people around me that I can go take that off of my plate, so I can, you know, adjust my work-life balance a little bit more, and you know, enjoy life, because you know, I've had, you know, from the minute I started at Carpenter Box, I was kind of chasing that dream of becoming a partner, and you know, once you get there, it wasn't anticlimactic, because it's almost like the hard work starts then. So yeah, really good.
Mate, no, that's really, and I suppose especially within that world that you're in, and with that, like, a lot of them younger people as well, aren't they? I guess they're, you know, influencers, YouTubers, whatever that looks like, they're a younger generation, and to have that amount of money and that amount of fame, I guess, at a certain level, like you say, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? And that's a difficult thing sometimes. I guess within that scene, you must see it a lot within that scene. Then
Absolutely, it's something I'm actually really passionate about, and one of my my side projects was wanting to set up almost like an association for helping these people, a little bit like the PFA in the football world, where there's almost like a union type organisation whereby people can talk to in confidence whether they're having money troubles, they're having mental health issues, even creativity problems, but actually they've got a support network or team around them. Now the big creators have got those teams around them, they've got teams of 20, 25 people, just around one YouTube channel. But the people that are at that mid-tier or perhaps lower down don't have that support network, but they're facing a lot of the same challenges. You look at young people generally these days, their whole lives are lived out on social media. Everyone's comparing everyone else on social media, and it's all about chasing likes or views or engagement. Well, you imagine taking that to extreme. It's not only your social life, it's your professional life and your business life. Some of these people dedicated, they're 5 years from the ages of 16 to 21. They didn't go to college, didn't go to university, because they were following this dream of becoming a social media influencer. And then all of a sudden it falls off a cliff, and they're not relevant anymore. They're not getting the engagement. They're not earning anywhere near as much money, and they've got effectively no real fallback either. For those individuals, it's really, really tough, because you go from all the highs, and it's like a lot of industries, right? When you're hot, everyone wants to know you, and when you're not, nobody wants to know you, and nobody answers your phones, nobody answers your texts. All those people that you did favors for when you were hot, they don't want to know you anymore. And I think that's really, really challenging for certainly those younger people to deal with, and something that I think the industry is going to need to look at, because unfortunately those careers are going to be relatively short. We're only probably maximum 15 years into this world, right? Even if you started right at the very, very beginning in 2000, I think YouTube was launched in 2006, right? So even if you were on the platform from 2007, 2008, it's only 14 years ago. What does the longevity look like? And actually a lot of my clients, not a lot, a handful are coming to that, you might call it retirement, and they're going, what am I going to do? Some of them have hopefully taken good advice, and they've saved money, or they've invested it wisely so that it can last them maybe for a lifetime. But a lot of them spent it and enjoyed it whilst it was coming in, and there's not going to be much left in the pot anymore. So
yes, mate, I suppose it's so similar, I guess, like you're looking at it almost to like an athlete, like a sportsman, like a footballer.
It's very similar.
The amount of money within football, and you look at it, but it's a short career ultimately, isn't it? Mid-30s, you're going to be retired, and then what is that? Because again, something I'm really interested in is you get to that point, and when you haven't got a purpose and you haven't got what how damaging that can be to someone's mental. I interviewed the guy Kevin Byrne from Checkertrade when he sold Checkertrade, and you talk to this guy and he sold it for 90 million or something crazy like that, and you sort of again back to that whole euphoria moment thing, but the level of like talking to him, the level of anticlimax he felt at that time, and he said he went through a really dark period after that, because this guy, I listened to him talk, he loved that business, loved running Checkertrade. It's all then back to that whole thing we're talking about life not being a destination, but it's the journey. You've got to enjoy that whole process and that period of growth. Like even with you, like with Starbox and starting that and seeing that grow over, like it's that journey of growing. Like you said, if you over that period, it will be interesting to just think over that period how much of it you've really been present and enjoyed that moment where, like you said, if you're in that mindset going, I'm chasing, like this is one bit, great, what's the next one, what's the next bit, it's definitely that. And I'll try to, talking to myself about that as much as anyone else, but about just knowing, and I spoke about it in that talk the other day about life not being that destination, but it is a journey.
Enjoy the journey. No, absolutely. And I'm glad I've had that realization now, because I could have kept chasing and kept going, for the next 10 years as well. And I've done it, like I said, from the minute I sat down, I set myself a target of I knew I wanted to become a partner at Carpenter Box, and I said that I was on work experience at the time, a 17-year-old. I never told anybody. They would have thought I was crazy, right? I made partner at 27. It took me 10 years from work experience to partner, which had never been done before. And hopefully, I really hope it will be done again. And like I said, hopefully I've kind of trailblazed a path to show that you don't just have to wait and do your time, for 20, 30 years to become a partner. There is, you can kind of make your own opportunity as well. But yeah, no, completely agree.
Career highlight? Becoming a partner or anything else?
I think career highlight, definitely becoming a partner. I think there's three that really stick out for me. Qualifying and becoming the youngest person in the firm to qualify, one of the youngest in the country, but didn't quite get that. But you have to do 3 years work experience, you have to pass 14 exams. But becoming one of the youngest in the country, but the youngest in the history of our firm at the time was a massive one. Becoming a partner at 27, again, it's a business that I'm incredibly proud of. Like I said, I've never known anything different, but the support and belief that those guys gave in me at a young age was great, and they shared my vision and believed in it. So making a partner and sitting around the table with those people that I'd looked up to for a long period of time was great. And then the third one was one of my clients, JJ, or KSI as he's better known, was fighting in a professional boxing match out in Los Angeles, and we flew out there, a couple of us from Carpenter Box, and ringside seats, it was promoted by Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I think we had 50 clients in the room, and we feelings, as part of that kind of scene at that moment in time was kind of like, wow, this is special, because often I'm dealing with these people on a computer, on a phone. Actually being present in that moment and going, actually, wow, this is what it's all about, was really, really good, and a real highlight that I'll remember for a long time.
Because I guess as well with that, like that, and just getting into that space at the start, and then, like you say, being at somewhere like that and seeing how that business has grown, and that, like, did you from that? Did you have that vision from like this is going to be?
Like I said, I think Marcus was, he kind of was so passionate about it that it kind of that really rubbed off on me, and sure. I shared his vision. I could see what he was achieving. And I had never had any desire, despite me being in front of the camera today. I am much more comfortable the other side of the camera, and I've never had any want or need to be kind of famous or popular, or
sure.
I'm much more comfortable actually almost being in the shadows, working hard. But he was so passionate about it that and you could see the creativity of these guys coming through, and the talent as well. That you thought, there's something here. This isn't a fad. This isn't just going to pass over. This is here to stay. So it was just got in early, really understood and built relationships with a lot of these guys and girls from a young age. We've been on a journey, right? Some of my, like I said, Marcus was my first client in 2012, 2013, I think. So coming up to 10 years.
Wow.
Some of these guys have been clients, in the next couple of years. So it's really, really good.
And I just want to take it back a little bit, because what it strikes me as well is like you've obviously got a very strong work ethic. Like you again, getting to know you over the years as I've done, but you've got obviously a strong. Where does that come from? Like, a couple of things really. Does that come from like your parents and stuff? Did they instill that in you, do you think? Or
yes, absolutely. My parents have always been very, very hard working and instilled that in me from a young age. I had a paper round from 13. I was earning £13 a week doing a paper round in Worthing. I got a job at Tesco's at 16. So whilst I was going to college, I was working weekends. So it had already been instilled in me that if you want something, you got to work for it. I was very fortunate to go to a private school, but I'm not your traditional private school guy. My parents worked incredibly hard. My dad worked away, and my mum worked 3 jobs, to put me through private school. So I think seeing them do that, sending me private school, which, as I mentioned earlier, I effectively, was an underachiever or below average because I just didn't work very hard. It was like, hold on a second. As I was maturing, I was thinking they've sacrificed an awful lot to send me to that school. No holidays, no nice cars, no nothing like. They effectively, for a period of about 10 years, put every penny into my education, and therefore I felt this kind of inherent, need to almost like repay them and prove them that it was worth it. So it comes from. They were great role models in terms of working hard, but also that kind of I don't want to let them down as well. And
did you feel like especially when you, I guess, come out of college and at that sort of stage, did you feel like you'd let them down a little bit? Like
definitely for a period of time, when my dad said, right, there's another thing, so we're in that limbo period between sitting my final A levels and then working out what the hell I'm going to do. Yeah. My dad said, well, you're coming to work with me, you're not sitting at home Monday to Friday. And like I said, it was those couple of weeks of going, I know that life is not for me. I'm just not wired to be able to do the manual labour on a building site effectively. And that also gave me that extra drive to go, I now have had a taste of what the alternative is, and that's not for me. So that gave me real drive and motivation. And I think also all my friends going off to university, I was always quite sociable. I was always out, always doing something, playing football, and there was always something else to do other than work or study effectively. And when they all went off to university, it was just me and Marcus really as a close group of friends left in Brighton sort of way. It was like actually some of that distraction was taken away, where I was like, I've got this opportunity in front of me. I've got time now, effectively, because I've got less distractions, and I want to make this work. So but it definitely comes from my parents 100%.
Love that. Look, I want to talk about this. I guess new celebrity world, the whole YouTuber influencers is something like you say, it's only really been born over the last, say, 10, 15 years, really. But, I mean, a lot of you work with some of the biggest names within that space, like, the Sidemen, etc. Tell me about, what, from a business point of view, what advice would you give to someone looking to get into that world?
I think, it's interesting, and it's a question I get asked a fair amount. I think if you look at, every year there's a study of, they kind of ask 12 to 16 year olds, what do you want to be when you're older? And if you go back 10, 15 years, it's like, I want to be a footballer, or I want to be an actor or a musician, etc. These days, 1 and 2 every time is kind of influencer or YouTuber, etc. Across the board, the amount of kids that look up to these individuals and want to replicate what they've done is incredible. Unfortunately, a lot of people want to get into it for the wrong reason. They see the money, they see the lifestyle, and they think, oh God, I want to be rich and famous ultimately. And a lot of people set out with that goal in mind, and those guys often don't last very long at all. A lot of the people now that they look up to, they were uploading consistently and working incredibly hard for often 12, 18, 24 months without getting really any recognition or renewal. It's about consistency and creativity, in my view. So if you've got ideas and you're passionate about those ideas and what you're doing, get going, but don't give up after 6 months. Even if you're getting 5 or 10 or 15 views on your video, even if you're watching it from your own phone, you can't expect success in that short period of time. You really have to keep going, and there's an element of luck involved. Somebody, all it takes is one video to go viral, and then off the back of that you can build a whole career. But it's definitely about consistency, and you've got to have that kind of creative X factor, and that's obviously excuse me, one of the things that I've definitely never had.
Okay. That's so, that's amazing. You know what, I've heard that a fair bit. Like I said, when I first wanted to start the podcast, you sort of look at it, and my first episode I launched, and then 5 weeks later there was another one, and then 3 weeks after that there was no, because then I started reading and listening to other podcasts and some advice around that, and everyone said about the consistency and trying to do. So I'm like, every week I release a new one now, and I've done that for a few months, and the numbers are what they are, but you look at it, it's been amazing to carry on doing it, and everyone you talk to is like, it's not a six week thing. You've got to do that,
And don't chase the numbers either. A lot of people I talk about is focus on the content, focus on the creativity, and if you are producing good content, you're putting it out consistently, the views will come in time. It will happen. If you're chasing the numbers constantly, you'll be disheartened, and you'll feel like you're failing or not being successful. Almost, if you could hide all the numbers, just focus on the content, and like you say, a consistent schedule. That would be my 2 biggest tips. But also, it's not easy. Honestly, it's a bit like when I was growing up, people wanting to be athletes or football, basketball. The percentage of people now that are going to make it is incredibly low.
Cool.
The great thing about the whole industry is the barriers to entry are very low. Right?
Yeah.
People think you need expensive equipment or cameras or computers, etc. You know, some of the content that's gone on to do really, really well is still very organic. You know, if you've got a phone, a half decent phone, and a set of headphones for a microphone and some free editing software, you can put something together that people will want to watch. You know, don't think you need £5,000 or £10,000 worth of equipment to get going. But you know, the other tip is people say just start. Just you know, you got nothing to lose, but also be realistic with your expectations. That you know, there's a fair chance that you're not going to be the next KSI or you know, the next you know, Tommy Innit or whoever else it is that's kind of up and coming these days. So
it's like I say, I find it a fascinating space. I think, like you're saying, I think ultimately people can get into it. Like you said, the barrier to entry is very low, but if it's honest and authentic and you're trying to get that across, that people buy into that, and people, that's what people want to see, isn't it? It's something that I guess you can. And do you get? You must have seen some people over there. You go, they are just in it for the money, and that you've seen them come and go. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Often the ones that are just in it for the money, they don't stick it out. You know, they just can't. Excuse me. So it's the ones, you know, the ones that are ultimately successful are the ones that, you know, just love making content. They love being creative. They love it as a way to express themselves. Like I said, the money and the fame and everything is very much secondary. So
I love easy because like I say, I started doing it, and like, this has almost just worked as like a bit of therapy for me. Like I just love having one, as you've known me for a few, I love having a chat. So for me, just sitting here having a chat with people and actually just picking their brains about like things that I struggle with, like the whole work-life balance thing, which we'll come on to a little bit later. But you know, that type of stuff that you sort of go talk about culture within the company and things I got wrong when I failed at the salon, but I think things like failure, success, all those, I love that story narrative in people's. I'm passionate, but I think everyone's got a story to tell, and whatever that looks like, whatever part you're on, that part of your journey, everyone's got something to be able to tell, so they come on and I just love hearing about them, so which is good fun. But tell me, so you like, what's interesting as well, like obviously like you said, mention about like the Sidemen and people like that who have created the, like you said, like millions of followers and stuff like that, and that people just, some of the stuff that they create, like you said, but ultimately they're just their creative teams, I guess, around them that create these amazing content.
Yeah, they're just you know, ultimately a group of friends who have a bit of a laugh, and I think that's why, you know, they've done so well, because, you know, they're so relatable, right? There's, you know, kids, they although they do live very aspirational lifestyles, you know, what they're joking about and what they're talking about, people can relate to. And you know, there's some questions that go, actually, as they've increased their production and their team and their budgets and more expensive cameras, they've you know, there's an argument to say you become less relatable. But you know, they all started playing video games in their bedrooms, which millions of other kids around the country were doing as well. But you know, they had, you know, one thing I would say is they all, not just the Sidemen, anyone who makes it in this world does have some sort of X factor. It's very hard to put your finger on what it is, but they've all got something that attracts people to them and makes you want to watch them, makes you want to listen to them, and I do genuinely believe that is either something you've got or you haven't. I certainly haven't got it, but that, because there's not a formula to it, right? It's not if you take these steps you will be successful. You have to have that little extra edge. I
guess it's like you relate that again, like you say, I guess to even with football, like, we're both not bad players, mate. We've got a little bit in the locker, shall we say? But you know, like you said, even then to make it in that world, you know, you've got to have that little bit more. I mean, you've got to become a professional footballer, a professional athlete. You've got to have, you know, I practiced all my, like, I loved it. I was, you know, I weren't far away from maybe, mate, but I didn't make it.
You've
I
got
weren't
that
good
natural
enough.
talent.
But you've got to have something there to be able to take it. I guess, like you said, it's the same in that world. There's got to be. It can't just be, well, if I just work hard, I'll keep creating this stuff. It's going to happen. It's got to be a little.
You got to have an edge, definitely, for sure. You got to have a little something, that kind of X factor, as I call it, and but it doesn't have to be the same X factor, you know. And one thing that's so great about the industry is, like I said earlier, there's such low barriers to entry, but also there's so many little niches as well that you wouldn't think people would be interested in. You know, some of the things that some of my clients do, you think, oh my God, I can't believe people watch that. But there's lots of, there's,
give me an example.
There's 7. So I've got a guy who he live streams himself like painting little Warhammer figurines, right? Like the little like army soldiers sort of things. And he's very talented, but he's got this like close up camera. And he just paints them for like, one little figure like this. It could take him like 24 hours to paint or something. And he'll have people live streaming, and sometimes he'll talk, sometimes he won't. And people just watching, you think, hold on a second, that feels like such a niche market. He makes a living doing it. There's a whole world of other weird and wonderful things that people do online, but like you said, there's like 7 billion people in the world. Chances are, and obviously access to the internet, there's other people out there that are interested in whatever you're interested in, as ever niche as you think it is. So that always surprises me what some of my clients come up with and what they do, but that one always sticks with me. And really nice guy, but you just think, hold on a second, say that again, what do you do? And but yeah, it's great.
Right, fair play. I just want to talk a little bit as well about, obviously, so recently as well, a couple of years ago, started Arcade Media as well. Tell me a little bit about that business.
So
how that come about.
A really interesting journey. So obviously, I've been working pretty much solely in the social media space for the last probably 6 or 7 years. The first couple of years of Starbucks, I was still working with traditional businesses in the local business market as well. But for 6 or 7 years now, this has been my life. This has been my world. I've built up a very good relationship with a lot of my clients. As someone's accountant, you are naturally in a position of trust. I know some of these people, probably better than their own wives or husbands know them, because I see all their bank statements. They talk to me in confidence about certain things that they've got going on in their lives. And that puts you in a position of trust, and therefore you build quite a close, tight-knit relationship with them. And like I said, for some of these guys and girls, I've been working with them for nearly 10 years now. And what happened was, obviously, this is still a new industry, and what I found was a lot of clients weren't getting proper kind of representation and management. There's a huge amount of people out there that will happily go and find you commercial opportunities. Oh, I've got a sponsorship deal for you, I've got a brand deal for you. They'll go and hustle for you because they're making a commission off the back of it, and it's a good business model. But actually, in terms of proper management, strategizing, their journey, through the next few years of their careers, also having a bit more of a focus on building their own value, building their own IP, building their own brands, where a lot of people just focus on the next kind of chasing the next deal. Over a couple of years, I'd been building up this feeling of, I think there's a real gap in the market for, real 360 management, whereby, you're involved in all areas of their lives and help them from working with their lawyer, working with their accountant, working with, their commercial opportunities, helping them build brands, working out, ultimately, how do you help them achieve their goals? Where do they want to get to, and how can I help you get there? I felt there was a real lack of that in this particular space. If you look at the traditional model, you've got some great talent management companies out there, but I felt it was really lacking in this space. And like I said, because of the relationship I had with the clients, because of my knowledge of the sector, ultimately it got to a point where I was like, actually, I want to try and solve this problem. So I was introduced to a chap called Aaron, just through a mutual contact, who was actually also had a background as an accountant, who'd made the jump into talent management. He was representing 3 or 4 clients at the time. We got chatting, very similar personalities, and said, well, actually, why don't we do something? So we set up a business. It was previously known under a different name, but it's now known as Arcade Media. He brought in a previous colleague of his called Jordan, and the 3 of us became co-founders of this business. We set out to ultimately sign some talent. We pitched to, I think, 3 or 4. One of them was the Sidemen. We set out a really comprehensive plan and vision for what we thought would be good for them. It wasn't perfect, but it showed them our mindset and the types of things that we were thinking about. They fed back with some of their ideas, and we agreed to help them. So we work with them on an exclusive basis. We don't work with any other talent. We haven't signed anybody else. that business was launched in April last year. And since then we've gone on to launch some amazing projects for them. So we launched them their own membership club, which was really, really exciting. Excuse me. We launched in their own vodka brand, so XIX Vodka, which came out in October. And then we also launched them their own fried chicken business, which is currently in about 40 sites in the UK, 10 in the UAE, but it should be up to 200 sites by the end of this year. And we achieved all of that in the first 6 months. Effectively, those businesses were launched. We've got some really exciting projects coming out later on in the year, but they're at the pinnacle of UK YouTube and social media, really. Yeah, so to have those as your first client and now our only client, it's not bad going. And they certainly keep us on our toes as well. So we've been helping them lots, and I now kind of split my time between the two businesses. So and I'm going through a journey at the moment of rebalancing that and bolstering the teams. At Starbox and over in Arcade Media, we're actively recruiting in both businesses. But I see my future as kind of being a flag bearer and ambassador for Starbox, because I'm still really, really passionate about what that business can be and what we've achieved so far.
I guess that's your baby.
That's my baby as well. Yeah. I'll find that really, really difficult to ever walk away from. Like I said, what we're doing there is hiring some really good people. I also feel with Starbox, it has been my baby, and I've looked after it for like I said, nearly 10 years now. I actually feel a fresh lease of life would be good for it. Sure. If it's just me and it's so closely associated with me, there will be a ceiling for it at some point. So bringing in some fresh ideas, some fresh blood to really try and kick that business on to the next level, despite what's already achieved, I think will be really good for that business. And I've got a real passion at the moment for, management, 360 management and honing and learning my skills in that area of the business as well. So I split my time at the moment. Still very much looking after my key and my core clients over in the accountancy business, but also got this, and like I said, working with Jordan and Aaron's been great as well. Gives me it's kind of, I've really got the passion for it at the moment, which is really good.
I tell you what, for me, taking out of that, just the level of self-awareness that you've got, like, because even at 30, still looking at something that you've grown with Starbox and being able to recognise that, the best thing for that business is for me to actually come out of that a little bit. I guess in part of it, I look at something like, I don't know, I've listened to a couple of podcasts where Ben Francis from Gymshark has spoke about where he was like, I'm not the right person to run that. He's come back in as CEO now, but being that self-aware to be able to go, I know I'm not the right person potentially at the moment for this, I'll get someone else in. For you, slightly different in the sense, but you're looking at it going, I've got it to this stage. You've obviously started Arcade Media as well, which is another, obviously sounds like a very exciting project, I'm not going to lie. And then but being able to go, right, okay, the best thing for Starbox is I'm going to get more people in to run that.
I think the risk is, after so long running that business, I had kind of tunnel vision a little bit with it, and you think actually this could be so much more, and it's such an exciting project. Actually, if somebody comes in with a new energy to really then take it on to the next level, I mean, I'll never not be involved or leave that business, because like I said, it's so exciting. We've got lots of exciting plans for that as well. Starbox wants to move into being more than just tax and accountancy. So at the moment we do tax and accounting through Carpenter Box. We do financial services, financial advice through Carpenter Box as well. But we're soon to be launching a mortgages business, so there'll be Starbox Mortgages, which will be a joint venture with a local business in Brighton, and similarly with insurance as well. So the idea is that people within that Starbox ecosystem can get those 4 key kind of professional services of tax and accountancy, financial services, mortgage and investments, and you shouldn't need to go outside of that world to get those services. So that's again, but that needs somebody to really kind of champion that and drive that forwards. And going back to what we were talking about earlier with kind of work-life balance, acknowledging and appreciating that I can't do it all, and as much as I'd want to, and as much as part of me thinks I give it a go, but I'll burn out and it won't be good in the long term. So looking to bring in some really talented senior people, and trusting them that they'll almost like somebody described it as, you know, handing over the keys to the Porsche a little bit. It's like, well, that's fine as long as they look after it. So but it's really exciting.
No, it does. It sounds Well, look, talking about, obviously, you know, it's Starbucks, you've got Arcade Media, and as we mentioned, obviously, young family recently. So what? Talk to me about work-life balance. Do you feel that, because obviously you're aware of it and you're taking that in your mind processes, looked into that. So do you have a work-life balance? Do you think you're at that stage now, and what does that look like?
I'm not there yet. It's a work in progress. I think it's a real balance between, you know, handing over but not losing kind of all control, and mentally I do struggle to go, I want to get involved, I want to be part of it, I want to be in all the meetings, all the discussions, but you know, it's one thing kind of knowing you want to trust people and hand things over, but actually forcing yourself to do it is sometimes a little bit more difficult. So I'm definitely on a journey with it. I'd say I'm in a better place now than I was a year ago, and I think I put some of that down to obviously my daughter coming along, and you know, wanting to make sure I spend time with her and be around for her, and you know, try and get that better. But one thing I've also realised is it's not just around the amount of hours that you're actually working. It's like the hours that you're not working. If your mind is still working, you're thinking about work, then you're distracted anyway. You might as well be working a lot of the time, you know. I'm really trying at the moment, working on, you know, turning my phone off. You know, I obviously got married a couple of weeks ago. We had our wedding. We got legally married last year, but we had our wedding a couple of weeks ago, and it's like just allowing myself to take some time off for these big life events and other things that are going on, I think is really, really important. And, you know, 99 times out of 100, if I do take a day off or do something, I come back and everything's fine, right? But often, you know, your mind says, well, I could be doing this, I could be doing that. So definitely a work in progress. I'm definitely learning. But one thing that I think you said, the first hurdle is the self-awareness and realising it. And now I'm trying to deal with it and let go a little bit of control to allow me to enjoy life outside of work a little bit more. So not there yet, but we'll keep going.
Hey, listen, I've got a few years on you and I'm still certainly not there yet. Hence one of the reasons I ask this question probably every episode, just trying to get, because it's something like to switch off from things. Like you said, I sometimes go, I've stopped working, I'm not actually at my computer, but my brain is still there. So I'm, again, similar to you, trying to go, look, well, as you alluded to a little bit earlier, like it's being present in that moment, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Like,
one thing I've done recently, which I found has really helped, is I've got a second phone number now. So I would never be a two-phone man. I've got one phone, which all my clients have got my number for, but I got a second SIM card on the same phone. So what that means is a selection. I think I gave my personal number out to 15 people, right? And only my mum, my dad, my wife, a couple of select friends, and one colleague in the case of an emergency have that phone number. And on my phone I can just turn off my work number. So if I'm going out on an important day, I can just turn the whole number off, so people can't call me, they can't WhatsApp me, they can't get hold of me. But actually I've still got a number that if I want to phone somebody or contact someone, I can do, and I've got this kind of personal number. So that little things like that, you know, just give me a little bit of balance. And
that's a great shout.
So it's just one thing that I've found has been helpful.
Okay. What do you do to switch off? Like, obviously played football, blah blah blah. But what's how do you switch off? I'll go for a run most mornings. But
it's a tough one. Obviously, with a young daughter, you know, you don't get much time to yourself. You know, when I'm not working,
it gets easier, mate. I promise you.
Running around after her, she's just starting to move at the moment. You know, crawling around, so can't take your eyes off her. But really, it's family time. You know, taking the dog for a walk. You know, taking Millie for a walk. Got Brighton season tickets, so I try and get over there, which is a little bit of downtime, which is quite nice. And
good result on the weekend.
Yeah, unfortunately I was away, so I missed probably the best game of the season, or probably the best game in the last 5 or 6 years. But you know, the diary's just crazy this year with obviously 2 years of COVID. I've got 5 weddings to go to, you know, lots of other kind of events and things that have been put off. So yeah, just trying to kind of have those boundaries. You know, I try not to work weekends. I'd rather do long days in the week and not work weekends, and just try and have that, bit of time where I'm away from work and away from the office. But family time, friends, out and about, really, just keep myself busy.
Good times. Right, listen, we're just coming towards the end, so I've got a couple of last questions to sort of wrap up with. But just tell me, what does the future hold for Sam Uwins?
Yeah, it's a really exciting question, and one that I try not to think too far into the future. I very much focus on kind of tomorrow or next week rather than thinking too far ahead. But I look back at what I've achieved over the last year with launching Arcade Media, Starbucks branching out away from just tax and accountancy, and I think it's the future is certainly believing in both of those businesses and really driving them forwards, and certainly in Arcade Media we're working on some really exciting projects which we're working to build some of these companies to be £1 billion brands. That's what we're working towards.
Wow.
XIX vodka, we're going to be launching that internationally. It's going to be in stores and shops, and for me that's where that kind of passion I had for business, I'm really being allowed to express that a little bit more as an accountant. Absolutely. Although you can get involved in business, you're working in kind of one vertical in the finance function, whereas over in Arcade Media we're across marketing, finance, even HR, sales, commercial deals, and I'm learning my craft a little bit over there as well. But that for me is, I think, really, really exciting. But I'm never going to turn my back on my roots with being an accountant. It's got me to where I am today. I think it's the backbone of any business, understanding your finances, making sure all the finances are in order. So still helping a select group of clients over there, helping them also achieve their goals and their dreams, and I think just keeping that balance going, but also the work-life balance as well. Really trying to work on that over the next 5 years, and make sure I get to see my daughter grow up and spend plenty of time with her.
Mate, amazing. That's fair, mate. Fantastic. Look, like I say, it's been so fascinating, really, to sort of, obviously, I took over Fernballs nearly 10 years ago, which was probably when I met you on the football pitch, and then just to see like almost the start of your career and it develop, and and then launching your own business and then with Starbucks, it's been fascinating to see, and I was so great to obviously get you on and have a chat with it, mate. And it's been, and look, I'm sure continued success without a shadow of a doubt. But we're going to finish off with a couple of quick fire questions. I've got one here. What one piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, well, obviously, looking back, now, obviously, that was a real key time for me. And I think one thing I would say is, certainly for anybody interested in the industry that I work in tax and accounting, find your niche, find what you're passionate about, and stick to it, and kind of really become an expert in that world. I did it with social media, but there's no reason why you couldn't do it with an area that you're passionate about. Build your network up, and for the first few years of your career, don't try and conquer the world. Just learn from the people around you, build your network, and hone your craft. And then when the time comes, you'll be there, ready to strike, in my view. So work hard, find your niche, find what you're passionate about. That's the most important thing at that age.
I love that. And look, as we've mentioned previously, obviously Stephen Bartlett was a bit of an inspiration to me for starting this podcast, really. So I do mention it on here that I have stolen this one from him. So my previous guest has left you a message, a question, which I'm going to read to you now. Okay, interesting one. Okay, if your company or business was a well-known global brand, which one would it be and why?
Oh God, that's a tough question.
That's a tough question. Throw you a curveball there, mate.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, the previous guest has caught me out. My mind wanders naturally to, business. The super successful businesses, but I think one for me that might not be as well known, but if you're involved in the industry at all, you'll know it. There's a company called YMU, it was previously known as James Grant. They're the biggest talent management company in Europe. They also have offices out in the US, but they're I think they probably turn over a few £100 million. but what they've achieved, and the way they run their business is something that I think is really aspirational. And you look at if you could even get to a tenth of what they've done, you'd be doing very, very well for yourself. So yeah, slightly left ball, and like I said, might be a little bit industry specific, but unfortunately, the big accountancy players get a bit of a bad reputation, and actually with what I do, I'd be wanting to steer away from their journey as much as possible. So and like I said, what we're doing with Starbucks is really trying to be less traditional in what the accountancy world stands for and its reputation. We're trying to almost change the reputation of accountants single-handedly, maybe, but we'll keep trying.
Mate, what a great way to finish. Great answer. Listen, as I said, mate, thanks so much for coming on. It's been brilliant chatting to you and fascinating conversation. And mate, thanks for your time. Wish you continued success, and congratulations again on coming afar and getting married over the
Thank you very much. No, thanks for having me. And like I said, from 10 years ago on a six-a-side football pitch, I never thought we'd be here, but really grateful for the opportunity. And it's great what you guys are doing with the County Business Club. So all the best.
Legend. And that is a wrap.